Thanks for joining me on the Peace and Parenting podcast. I'm so glad you're here. Welcome to the Peace and Parenting podcast. I'm Michelle, and I'm so glad you're listening. I want to read a review on Apple iTunes that says, so grateful for this podcast. I really want to change my parenting approach to be more kind and caring. I want to build a close bond with my kids now when they are little, and I need to break the habits that have been instilled in me since birth. This podcast touches on so many great subjects and gives you great ideas, like special time. Thank you for this. It's so true. We can all work on our past experience as kids and not take in those bad habits into our parenting, but it's a lot of work. And so thank you for doing this hard work. It makes a big difference in the lives of our children and in the lives of the people who interact with our children. So thank you for that. I really appreciate it. I want to talk today about the 4 things that I wish I would have done from the beginning of my parenting. Now, I wish I would have done a lot of things from the beginning of my parenting, but these are the 4 most important things that I think I wish I would have just had more awareness around and would have focused on more than focusing on the things that I did, because I came to parenting pretty unrealistic, I suppose. I came to parenting thinking that I had it all figured out, that it wasn't going to be hard. I couldn't do any worse than my own parents, right? That's what I kept thinking in my mind. If I just stay sober, don't yell and scream, and actually be present, then I would achieve so much more than my own parents did. And I thought that's all that it took. And what I didn't realize is that it's a lot more complicated than all that, Michelle. And you didn't have it all figured out, my love. You needed to do some work on yourself. And so the number one thing that I wish I would have never started using and would have, really rethought was the idea of using punishments. And I know I talk about it a lot, but I really do think it is the crux of the main difference between this kind of parenting and conventional parenting. And when I say punishments, I mean also consequences, with the exception and the caveat around natural consequences. And I'll say it again, I've said it many times, natural consequences are those which we are not involved in at all. A natural consequence is not you wasted too much time, and so now you can't have any books before bed. That's a consequence that we impose. A natural consequence is more like, if you don't do your homework and you don't turn it in, you're not going to get the points. That's a natural consequence that we have no control over. So anything that we have control over at all is a real consequence. You can call it logical. You can call it, deserved. You can call it whatever you want, but it's still a consequence within our control. And when it's a consequence within our control, I see it as a punishment. And it's just the same as any other punishment that you would use. Now, where I find a little bit of difference is when someone says, well, my kid drew all over the wall and then I'm going to make them clean it up. Well, your kid drew all over the wall. Now, can you gain cooperation and ask them to help you clean it up? And is that a consequence, or are you asking them, hey, would you like to help me clean this up? You're not saying, you drew on the wall, now you have to clean it up because it's your fault. There's a very different way to present that. Hey, you drew all over the wall. Would you like to help mommy clean that up? That's not a consequence. That's a, hey, we're going to clean up the wall because the wall's dirty and we need to take care of it. And we're going to do it together. And I'm not going to force you to do it and make you do it. I'm going to ask for your cooperation around it. Now, if a child says no, you can leave that mark on the wall and you can revisit it later and ask them when they're in a better place and say, hey, that the writing is still on the wall. Maybe we should clean that up. Can you use play? Can you use connection? Can you be thoughtful around it? Can you be patient around it? And can you get it done with organic cooperation? I do not see that as a consequence, but it's all about how you present it as well. Okay, so that's the first thing that I really wish I wouldn't have used. I used timeout. I used taking things away. I used the idea of threatening and bribing and belittlement and shame. And I wish I wouldn't have done those things. Now, of course, in my worst moments, I yelled and I threatened my kids, and I I don't think consciously I wanted to do those things. And those things happen because we become dysregulated and we're human. And of course, we're going to do those things if we don't know what else to do. And if we've run out of ways to, try to get cooperation in our house and we find ourselves at a loss and we end up threatening and we know we don't want to. But I really wish that I would have not used tactics like timeout. Like, you're not being nice to your sister. You're going to have to go sit in the corner, and then when you're feeling better, you can come out. Now, I don't care who wants to argue with timeout. I absolutely believe that it is detrimental for children and totally not necessary to quote unquote teach any sort of lessons. In fact, I don't think it teaches lessons. It teaches kids to be alone with their feelings. It teaches kids that when they mess up, they're going to be isolated. It teaches kids that mistakes are really grave and they need to be punished. It teaches kids a lot of things, but I don't think that's necessary to get the kind of behavior that we want from our children. I don't think we need to use tactics like timeout. I also don't think we need to use tactics like taking things away. I used to take Esme's Nainu away, her blankie, her like most precious possession. When I got to my ultimate level and I couldn't take it anymore, all about me, right? I would take her Nainu because I wanted her to stop. I needed her bad behavior to stop. I needed her emotions to stop. I needed her to stop having any sort of kerfuffle in the house because I couldn't manage it. Now, of course, then again, this happens. We get to our boiling point. And if we get to our boiling point, we really need to think about, why are we at our boiling point? What is it about this child's behavior that's igniting me? And should it be? Should the 4-year-old really be igniting me? Or should I be able to maintain my emotions a bit better and figure out, what's this unmet need for me? What are the emotions that I'm playing on? Where's my ego in this? What's going on my side of the street? Because a child, a 4-year-old, an 8-year-old, a 16-year-old, they're all going to do things that are childish. And if we respond with upset every single time they do, we're going to have a really hard time parenting. But again, sometimes we do. And we notice that and we repair and we move on and we try to do better next time. We're not going to be perfect in it, but are we doing it intentionally? I was intentionally using timeout. I was intentionally taking things away. I was intentionally, being punitive with my kids, threatening and bribing. I wish I would have known better way back when, 14 years ago, or actually more than that. I started this work 14 years ago. So 19 years ago when Esme was born. I wish I would have thought twice about punishments. I wish I would have said, you know what, that stuff doesn't work. It's going to cause resentment. My kids aren't going to like it. Let me just not use it and let me figure out a better way to come to my children, because it caused a huge kerfuffle. Now, when punishments stopped working for me, which they actually never really did, I thought they did, but they didn't. But when I finally tired of them and tired of the back and forth and tired of the way they made me feel, and the hardness that it created, the rupture it created between Esme and I, mostly because Pia was more cooperative and just kind of went with it, which definitely wasn't good either. But when I tired of that, I moved to rewards. And I thought, oh, here's positive discipline. Let me use rewards. Let me be kind and give them things and praise them and tell them what a great job they're doing. And I thought, oh wow, this is so much better. This is a great departure from punishments. And as a teacher, I used reward system in our classroom. I used mostly praise, like, oh, I like the way, Melissa's sitting on the carpet. Oh, somebody put their books away nicely. So and so lined up by the door, and then everybody would clamor to get as little kids, they would clamor to get the praise. Of course, that stops working after a while, and you always have the outliers who don't care about the praise, and praise never really ends up working. Same thing happened in my home. I got this elaborate, beautiful star chart. I had all these incredible, very easy things for Esme to achieve. Be nice to your sister, clean up after yourself, um, don't be unkind to your friends, like all the things that I wanted her to do. I would put on this list and then she would get a little star. And at the end of the week, if she had enough stars, she could turn them in for a prize. And I had a big box of junky little prizes that were in my garage. and I would bring it in and she would pick a prize and she would be so happy. But pretty soon she stopped caring about the prizes and she stopped caring about the stars and she stopped caring about the praise. And I think, there's a lot of things behind rewards. And if you follow Alfie Kohn at all, and if you don't, maybe it's a good book that you'd like to read, Punished by Rewards. And then it's called A's Praise. And I can't remember the other part of the subtitle, but he's all about rewards and punishments. And he also wrote Unconditional Parenting. That's a great book. So he's an educator out of New York State and he's lovely. And so um, I stumbled across his work close to the time when I started to change this idea around rewards. And what he really says, and what Dr. Deci, who he followed the work of Dr. Deci from the 50s. Dr. Deci is also a psychologist who studied rewards. And what they found is that rewards don't really make a difference and they actually decrease intrinsic motivation. So there's one study where they gave two groups of college students the Rubik's Cube or some puzzle um, to solve. And they gave two groups. They gave one group and said, "We'll give you $100 if you solve it." And they gave another group and they said, "We'll give you, we're not going to give you anything. We're excited to see how many times can you solve the Rubik's Cube." And the people with the $100, if you every time you solve it, you're going to get $100. Well, the people without the rewards ended up solving the puzzle more because of the intrinsic motivation to solve the puzzle to satisfy their own desire. And I guess it really goes to show you that rewards diminish the validity or the desire to do a task. And so we don't need rewards to motivate us to do tasks. If we're motivated to do that task, it should come intrinsically. Additionally, when you don't get praise, like the kids in my classroom, when they weren't getting the praise, like I like how so and so is sitting. And I could only do that. I couldn't do it for every single kid, after a few times. Thank you for Jose for sitting nicely. Thank you, Maria, for sitting nicely. And then by that time, everybody just kind of came to the rug and sat. But the people who didn't get the praise, maybe they felt punished because I didn't recognize them. I was only recognizing the first, the second, the third, and maybe the fifth, fourth, and fifth kids, and the rest of them just didn't get the praise. Also, I even find it with myself. Like, I always craved my dad's acceptance, and I always wanted him to tell me that I was doing a good job because I never heard I was doing a good job. I never felt I was doing a good job with him. So when I do hear it, I glom onto it so desperately. And when I don't hear it, I feel like he doesn't notice. But does he not notice, or did he just not say anything? And am I so praise seeking because I grew up with, the depravity of any sort of connection? Do I need that? And when I don't get it, how do I feel? And there's so many other aspects of rewards that you can read up on that just, they don't make any sense and they really are punishments. And so in our family, they ended up being punishments really. And so Esme stopped responding to the rewards because she didn't care about them. And she didn't care about getting those prizes. And so that all just kind of fell to the wayside. So I wish I would have never done the punishments and never done the rewards. I think I would have saved myself several years of misguided parenting because they're really not helpful. And a lot of people will say, well, it's good for some people and some people can parent like this and some people can parent like that. And great. Of course, you can use punishments and rewards, but it doesn't foster relationship. And so if you really are desiring a good relationship with your kid and fostering a solid relationship, I think those are things that you can stay away from because they tend to erode relationship. And I don't think they actually give you what you want as far as behavior in the long run. Okay. The third one that I want to talk about is I wish I didn't believe that I needed to turn everything into a teachable moment or a lesson or a learning. And I had this great, like burning desire in my body. Like I have to teach my children everything. They have to be kind. They have to have good manners. They have to be respectful. They have to understand math really well. They have to be good readers. They have to be good students. They have to be, really good friends. They have to be good sisters. Like I felt so much pressure in my body. And as a parent, as a mom, that I needed to make these good people and it was my responsibility. And that if they didn't turn out as good people, then I would be chastised. And so I felt so nervous and under the gun. And every time something would come up where my child would do something that didn't, represent that they were kind, or that didn't represent that they understood how to read, or any of these things, I became panicked as if I wasn't doing my job good enough. And so I needed to teach them the lessons right now, right here, before was too late. And as a new mom, that's a lot of pressure. As any mom, that's a lot of pressure. First and foremost, it is not our job to teach our children everything. Secondly, our children learn from us by what we model. So if you're modeling being a kind person, they will eventually get there. It doesn't mean that they'll always get there. It also doesn't mean that they'll won't fall short and make mistakes and have to navigate and figure it out. And I think that we feel so pressured for them all to do it right now. And now having kids that are 16 and 19, I get it. Like, things happen over time. They will get there with the right guidance. And when I say guidance, I really mean modeling. And this is where people will say, oh, well, you're just not going to be a parent. You're just going to take hands off. No, 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 no. I'm going to be present and connected and modeling the things that I want my child to emulate. Will it be perfect? No. Will I melt down sometimes? Yes. Will I do the wrong thing? Of course. But let's hope more than not, I do the right thing. I model the correct behaviors, and I am a moral, upstanding person. And my children see that, and they will model it. They will emulate it. They will mimic it. And that really becomes the way in which we teach. We don't need to have a lesson. We don't need to have a lecture. And I think oftentimes when we're like, oh, this is a teachable moment, I'm going to tell my kid what to do or how they should act or whatever it be, that it becomes a lecture. And no child likes to be lectured. No person likes to be lectured. And those lectures don't necessarily translate into learning. What do you feel? How do you feel when you're lectured? Does it sit well with you? Does it create a place of learning? Or is it hard? And with an immature kid with an immature brain and an active mind, is that the way they learn? Social scientists tell us that kids learn from modeling. 80% of what they learn is what's modeled to them. So we have to model the right things. We can't, just tell them what to do and expect them that they're going to do it, or tell them how to be moral. We can't teach them the lessons by shoving it down their throat. We let them have experience around it again and again and again and again. And hopefully eventually they get there. But much of the time they're going to fall short, as we all do. We're all human. We really are. And the last thing that I wish I would have started from the beginning is not worrying so much about getting things done and making my house feel like it was a productive place. I wish I would have just leaned into making it feel good and happy and fun. And my house was not fun in the beginning. It was tight and it was rigid and it was scheduled and it was productive, and we got things done and we went to appointments and we went to ballet and we did this and we did that and we had play dates, but it was rigid. It was really rigid. And I think that's the key, is that I was rigid. And in my rigidity, I taught my oldest rigidity. Well, she was already pre-wired for rigidity. She's a Capricorn. I don't know if anybody believes in that stuff, but she's pretty like organized, like by the book, like, needs rules, needs these things. And so this just pushed her deeper into her rigidity and inability to be flexible, because I wasn't modeling flexibility. And back to the lessons. I was modeling that was important to stick to this schedule and to get things done and check things off lists. And that became way more important than how it felt in my home, than making it feel connected, than making our relationships feel connected. I did not prioritize relationship and the connection around the relationships I shared with my kids. I loved my kids. I always have loved my kids. but I don't know if they felt the love. I don't know if they felt what was in my heart because I didn't let my heart be. They weren't privy to my heart. They were privy to my organization. They were privy to my getting things done. They weren't so privy to my heart. And I think, I loved them, but I don't know if they necessarily felt the love that they should have felt back then or that they could have felt back then. And it's one thing to love our kids, but do they know that? And so I think the connection piece is where I really was missing it. I needed my home to feel connected rather than productive, and to let go of the productivity, to let go of some of the a lot of us are like, we have to be on time and we have to get to this. And what do I hear often with parents? What do I do if I have to do that though? I can't do connection if I have to go to the store. I can't do connection if I have to get to a doctor's appointment. It's really important. And it just in them asking, even like on Instagram in a post, just in them asking, I can feel the nervousness. I can feel they're so dysregulated around it. And I was the same exact way. I needed to get things done and be on time and do and do and do and do. And I don't know if that came from my upbringing. I think part of it did, but also society, and just that we so value getting things done. And moms, especially, are so pressured to do everything and to make it look like they have it all under control. And we are responsible for so much that it is an insurmountable pressure. And so, of course, we get dysregulated and we have to get it done. But then we put that pressure and we put that, angst onto our kids and onto the relationship we share with our kids. So I wish I would have let them feel the love that I had for them, let them feel calm and peaceful in our union, calm and peaceful in our house. I wish the feeling in our house wasn't so agitated, wasn't so getting things done. So those are the four things that I wish I would have kind of done from the beginning. I hope they're helpful for you. I'm so glad that you're here. Thank you for leaving me all these kind reviews and messages. I so very much appreciate it. And thanks for joining me on the Peace and Parenting podcast. And I'll be here again later in the week.